think of the last class you took. Maybe it was in college, maybe it was in high school, that English class late in the day. Remember how it felt like it took forever? What if you could get it done, out of the way, in a single week? It's a wild idea. A little scary too. I'm going to get back to the scary part of it, why that might not be a bad thing. But that's what I'm here to talk about today, the possibility of taking a whole semester and doing it in a single week, and why that might just be the future of education. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about how I started thinking about this in the first place. It started during the pandemic when, along with every other college professor and high school teacher and middle school teacher and kindergarten teacher, I had to find some way of doing everything I do in the classroom and taking it online all at once. I was at the time chair of the English department at Colorado College, and I remember what a daunting, nearly impossible task it seemed like. If you can show me how to get more than one person on a Skype call, said a guy in my department, I'll teach online. Back then, that seemed like a halfway reasonable question to a certain segment of the population. Today, it seems like a completely ridiculous question to every segment of the population, including your grandmother and her grandmother. Believe me, if your grandmother's grandmother is still alive, she's also on Zoom. That's how fast things are changing. And for those of us in the educational business, the shape of that change had to do with what constitutes a contact hour. Now, if you don't know the term, contact hour is very simply the amount of time that you spend in class. As to how it changed, let me put it like this. Before the pandemic, you could watch me give a lecture on Shakespeare on your iPhone. During it, it counted as if you were in class, even if you did it at midnight, under the covers, at twice the speed. The blurring of that line between class being something that you had to be in and something that you could binge. That's the first part of what got me thinking about the 1-week semester. The second part of it arrived when I got COVID. Now, this was super early on, before we knew very much at all about how it was transmitted or even what the symptoms were. A friend of my daughter's tested positive, then she did, then we all had to test. And before I knew it, my daughter and I were quarantined in the basement of our house. I wasn't sick at all. But that didn't prevent me from imagining I had all of the symptoms all of the time. Have you lost your sense of smell? Called down my wife. I think so, I said. You think so? She said. What does that mean? It means no, said my daughter. We have to find something for your father to do, declared my wife. And that's when my daughter turned to me and said, you want to watch The Office? And we did. Not just 1 or 2 episodes, not just 1 or 2 seasons, but the whole of The Office. And it was awesome. Even now, 3 years later, I can look at my daughter and say, remember that episode when? And she'll say, yes. And I don't have to wonder about it. I don't have to test her. I know that she knows. I know that she remembers. We binged it together. I remember it too. And that made me wonder if I could do the same thing with Shakespeare. If 3 years after a student had taken a class with me, I could say to them, you remember that moment in King Lear when? And they would say, yes, as if they had been quarantined in the basement with me and done nothing but binge Shakespeare for a whole week. Now, as you might imagine, the question of whether students remember anything at all from any of the classes they take is the kind of thing that professors like myself ask all the time. There have been a ton of studies on it, and one of them was done by some colleagues of mine in the economics department right here at Colorado College. What they were interested in is the question of whether schedule affects retention, whether students remembered more about the classes they take, depending on whether they take it on the semester or the trimester or on the block plan, which is what we do at Colorado College. We take one class at a time for 3.5 weeks. And the answer is, it doesn't. Students remember mostly nothing at all about any of the classes they take, no matter what schedule they take it on. And that made me wonder if perhaps the learning outcomes associated with my 1-week semester might be roughly comparable to the already entirely unimpressive learning outcomes of any other academic schedule. But what if they were better? What if greater speed and intensity equaled greater retention? What if the 1-week semester unlocked other things about education along the way? Education is one of the last, if not the last great industry that is ripe for disruption. The product it delivers has not changed much in the last 50 years, but at the same time, the costs associated with it have risen by a factor of what some estimate to be about 3,000%. Now, there's no questioning that it's a good thing. Higher education makes people happier, it lifts your wages, it fights fake news, it promotes democracy, but it's hard not to see it moving in the wrong direction, getting ever more exclusive and expensive and inaccessible. The problem is that despite attempts to do so, there has not emerged a model that has put the user, that is the student, at the center of the educational exchange, the way that Airbnb has for vacation rentals or Uber has for ride sharing. The problem is that education stays stuck on what we might call the broadcast model. Now, when I say broadcast model, I'm thinking about the old days of television. Back then, before Netflix, before streaming, if you wanted to watch the show that I was watching, we had to be tuned in to the same channel at the same time. Higher education is like that, but worse. When I teach a class on Shakespeare, the channel I'm on isn't even a channel. It's an actual classroom on an actual campus somewhere. You're either there or you miss it entirely. That's exactly what got taken apart during the pandemic, when we blurred the line between being in class and binging it. When the contact hour became something that you could get on campus or on demand. Now, I am not suggesting that we take education online and automate it. We know that doesn't work. Automated online education is just the classes and nothing else, and no one wants that. You miss out on everything that makes college great. The people that you sat next to, your in-jokes, that professor that said the same thing over and over and over again, that feeling of being all in it together, all at the same time, that stays with you forever. What I'm suggesting is something different. I'm suggesting a hybrid that takes the best parts of the small college, small class experience and combines it with the new flexibility of the digital contact hour to make it more accessible, to make it more scalable than we ever thought possible. How would it work exactly? I don't know. It sounds like a schedule, but what it really is a shape that can be reshaped and reshaped again. I do know that teachers will do what teachers always do. They will take it and they will make with it something that works best for them and their students and their subject matter. The other thing I know for sure is that there is enough time in a week for a whole semester. Do the math. A semester is 18 weeks of 1-hour classes 3 times a week. That's 56 contact hours. If there's enough time in a week to binge the whole of The Office, there's enough time for a whole semester. A bigger, more critical question is who would ever want to do it? Don't forget, this isn't streaming a sitcom. This is an actual college course. There would be essays and exams. It would be super demanding and stressful, and yeah, even a little scary. Yes, it would, and maybe that's not a bad thing. At least it isn't according to the FAA. And when I say FAA, I mean Federal Aviation Administration. If you turn to page 11 of their instructor's handbook, you'll find a whole section there detailing the ways in which things that are learned under surprising, unconventional circumstances are learned more quickly and stay with you longer than those things that are learned under conventional or boring circumstances. Now, it's not for everyone, but it doesn't need to be. We need to stop thinking about education like that, as a one-size-fits-all model, or as if there's one educational schedule that's going to rule them all. Most of all, education has to stop thinking of itself as being stuck on a broadcast model that's pricing itself out of most of the population and the real good it can do in the world. It's like pizza. Some people like pepperoni on it. Some people like mushrooms. I like anchovies. The fact that I like anchovies on my pizza in no way means that I also believe that it should replace or displace every other kind of pizza toppings. But anchovies exist, and they have implications. They change pizza. That's your 1 week semester. It's not going to be for everyone, but I'm willing to bet it's for some, and that there are more of you out there than we know. And if that's the case, we owe it to you and to education itself to see what other possibilities it unlocks if we give it a try. Thank you.